just use command line.
And I use this one, it's got lots of really good features.
Which one is that one?
Sapien.
Sapien, okay.
Sapien PowerShell Studio.
All right. Everybody ready? Let's get started. So, for starters, that bothers me. I mean, yeah, boy, that didn't work. I thought that would. Oh well. I'll live with it. Okay. So now we're going to get into functions. And we're going to turn these two guys into functions. So what am I going to do here? I've got my server list, this whole thing right here, and that's going to have to change just a little bit, because if I put that in a function, I have to put the whole thing in a function, right? Which I could do. I could take that whole thing and say, you know what, for every server, I want to get every one of these guys in a database. Or I want to get, I want to print every table in every database to the screen, right? I could do that. But that's not very.
You want to make it extensible.
Cody, yes.
Right.
So the thing you got to ask yourself when you're making these functions is, am I going to need this again? In other words, am I ever going to need to select data from a database again?
Yes.
More than likely, right? Am I ever going to need to go to the tables tree in a database on a server again? More than likely, right? So that's where our split is going to be. And how widely, what am I trying to say here? How broad should this function be?
Pretty broad.
Your function should be specific. Your
Yes.
function should return exactly what you're
It should
asking
do
to
one
return,
thing.
nothing else.
Right?
But,
Now,
but.
yep, it does one thing, it does it very well, and it moves on, right? Hopefully it does it very well. Now, with this in mind, so I've got this server list. I don't think I can get around that loop, okay? So I'm gonna make this the function. So I'm gonna take this guy, and I'm gonna say X. I'm going to paste it up here, and I'm just going to say function, and we'll call this, what is this, query server. And I'm going to take my parentheses. My function doesn't have to take parameters. If it doesn't, it's just like a SQL function, empty params, right? Empty parens. And just like my other guys, it's going to be surrounded in my curlies, like that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take this current object and I'm going to set SQL to it, and I'm going to query it, and I'm going to get the results in this database list, right? But so far, it's doing that, but it's not doing anything with it, right? It's getting that it's filling that DB's variable.
Right.
And
So
then
in another language, you would write return here.
right, and you can. I can absolutely say return
I think that would be a C thing to say return.
DBs, right? Well, remember, this is written in .NET.
Ooh.
Or I can just say DBs. We're going to get into the things of that here later on in this session and the next session, right? So whatever it takes, whatever calls this is going to get this back. So if you say return, if you just say DBs, it's all good, right? So now I kind of need something here, don't I? So let's do this. Let's say let's say,
Current DB.
current server, right? I don't need this line anymore because current server is going to replace that, right? Let me do the whole thing. There we go. I could do that and then use server down here, but since this is a parameter, this whole thing can see it, so there's no need for this line anymore. You understand? So now I'm saying, get this query from this server that I pass into here. We good? Now, it's a good idea, a really, really good idea, to test these things as you go along. You don't want to make 40 changes to a script and have it blow up and then go, well, what did I do, right? So, I've got this line, I've got my server list, I've got my DBs. So in my DBs, I've got my current database. But I've got, where am I? Right here, my server, right? So, I need to get my query, so that's good. And now, I need to figure out where I'm using that because I've lost myself. I'm getting the, okay, so that's the DB list right there. Okay, so query server, and I'm going to get the DB list. In fact, this is ill-named, right? Right now it's good for DBs, and we're going to leave it like this for now, right? Right now it's good for DBs because it's selecting from sys databases, but I do want this to be more generic ultimately, right? But right now we're just going to do a direct lift and shift. So I've got this guy. So I've got my current server, and now I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to control X that one. Give me a function under here. And I'll call it, let's call this one tables. Get that. That. Put that inside there. So now I've got tables. So tables, I'm getting this guy, so I'm going to get query server. Let's go ahead and call that. Now that I've got that emptied. And so it's going to query the server for the thing. So what do I need to do? I need to get a list of databases. So I'm going to say DB list equals query server, and then I'm going to pass it my current server name, which I managed to take out of there somehow. That's okay, I'll do it like this. So I'm going to pass it, there it is. Because it's coming from this guy, right? So it's just that. So I'm still setting my my server the same way I was before. Oh, sorry. That's better. There we go. That didn't look right.
Now we can do this without a main?
We can. There never was a main. This
There
isn't.
never was a main.
This is a scripting language, not a compiled language. Okay, so I've got my function up here that gets my DB list. It takes the current server, it queries it, and it returns that query object, right? So when I call it down here, I'm going to set DB list equal to that variable, or I'm going to set it equal to the return from that function and pass in that variable. And this is another thing about PowerShell that aggravates me, is when you call functions, the parameters you pass in are not in parentheses and they're not separated with commas. It's spaces.
Wow.
Guys, you're killing me.
Wow.
I I know it. I
They're
know
very
it.
sensitive.
So, you gotta get used to that too, right? Which is another reason why I like classes, because, well, like writing my own classes, because it follows the convention of everything else, right? So, does everybody understand what we've done here? I think you're all good enough with like T-SQL functions and stuff like that, that you probably get the concept of a function and calling a function, right? You just gotta, but if I had another parameter here, it'd look like that. I know.
That's weird.
I know. So now I've got my DB list. Now for each database, I need to do something, right? So I need to get my tables for each database. And here, I've got a list of databases. Well, that's not really gonna do, is it? Because I'm not doing all the databases, I'm doing a single database. So now I'm gonna say current database. And here I'm getting it from there. I don't have to anymore because I'm passing it in. Which also means I can get rid of that one. And everything else looks good.
You left in a closing.
Yeah, you're right.
parenthesis.
There you go.
Not that one, because that closes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So not that one. That's why they should be marked.
They're, no, everything's good.
No, they're lined up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And how do we make sure how do we make sure these are lined up? Yo, come on in. Don't be a snob. It's Steve. Okay. Right, so how do I make sure that all these are lined up? Because you don't need an editor for this, right? You could write this in Notepad. You should tag your brackets, right? Like we did before. I'm gonna say tables and tables, and inside here, I would officially like to do something like that here as well, right? So I would say something like dir and dir. I'm telling you, if you get in the habit of tagging your stuff, you'll love it. I do that in T-SQL too. Begin, comment, end, comment, so I know which one goes with which. And if I need to move that block somewhere, I've got a solid place I can boom and move it. And it's a nice visual representation too when I'm just looking through code to see which loop to see which begin and end I'm in, right? So tag your begin and ends, tag your brackets, and you'll be golden. Okay, so now I've got this function, and it's gonna connect to just a single database, and it's going to print its tables. So now I just need to call that one. So for my server list, I'm gonna do this for each server, but now I need to do this for each database as well, right? So I need to say DB list, pipe that to a for each, get my curlies in there. And since I've got a database list here, and I know this is an object, I'm gonna have to set that to a name, right? So I'm gonna have to say current database equals, because I'm getting that list back of databases, right? So I know it's the name. And now that I've got that, I'm gonna say tables, current database. Tables is the name of the function. Would you rather it be like get all tables? There you go. If that's better for you. Does anybody not see what we did here?
I have a question. If the function you call is already in a commandlet, does it override it or give you an error? Meaning, if it's the same name as a commandlet, if you call your function. We can try it.
Give me an example, like if I named my function ping,
No, if you named your function get processes or get server.
it would probably run get processes,
Okay.
yeah.
Error.
But I don't know, I've actually never tried that.
Okay, I was just curious.
He's asking if I name my function get processes, what would it do? Do it real quick and
Yeah,
let
I'll
me know.
test it. I just
Um,
want to accidentally name something wrong.
So this is aptly named query server. We've only halfway done this justice right now, right? We did it in the name. I'm gonna pass it that current server. You see how we still need these loops, right? Because now I'm getting the list of databases. Now I'm using the list of databases, and I'm getting all the tables after I set that and passing it that. So now instead of a single loop handling the same thing every time I go through this loop for every database, it's gonna call get tables, which is gonna do that connection, then it's gonna print from there, and then it's gonna come back here. You get it? I could take the print out of there, and I could print it down here if I wanted to. But I kept it in the function. And I'll show you why that's not such a super good idea in a minute. But first, let's see if I did this all right. You realize I'm writing this on the fly, so I have no idea if it's gonna work. Especially since I got this little, I think I got an extra right there.
I think that one you're
So when I tag this, there we go. So I'll tag this one here. So I got DBs, I got server, and I should be good. There we go. Okay. Let's see if it does what it's supposed to. Let's run it in the console. Cancel out of that. You get the idea. Now, if I want to make a change to this, then I just make a change. To the function, and that's it. Cancel out of that again. See how that works? Okay. Now, this guy right here, query server, that's excellent. Pass in the server name, that's excellent. DBs, what if I'm getting customer IDs next time, right? So this needs to be a little bit more generic. There's nothing wrong with calling it DBs, but when you come in here in 6 months, you're gonna be like, DBs? That's not DBs, that's customer IDs, right? So let's just call this, result. Or you could call it data set or whatever, right? And we don't have to change anything else because we're still just returning that, right? So now it's more generic. And now I can even do this. I can pass it in the query. And then in here, well, actually, let me do this first. I'll take that guy. Cut him out of there. Put him down here for just a second. Place that. And now say, did everybody follow that? So now it's completely generic because I'm passing in the query as well as the server to connect to. And I'm using the query parameter in this line I'm setting the query in here. So now if I want to use this again and again and again and again, all I have to do is either take this query here and put it down here as a string or set a variable. Which one do you think you should use? Is there anything wrong with putting a string in here? Do you think the parameter would, do you think the function would accept that? She's reluctantly going. Anybody else?
As a string, it should accept the parameter.
It will accept it, yes. I could put strings in both of these if I wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Then why'd I do it like this?
Centralize it.
You might want to use it again.
Data, then usage. Setting the data, then using the data. You will be very happy if you do this, I promise you. Because now, if I do other stuff in this list, this call never changes. Ever, 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 ever. All I gotta do is say query equals, give it the new query, and then print that line again. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's why we do that. And of course we're gonna do select star because why not, right? Okay. So now we've got this lovely generic function that's gonna query whatever we tell it to do. Since I took that out of there and passed in a new variable, we need to test it, don't we? So let's run this guy real quick. We'll only run it for a couple seconds. There we go, works just fine. And we're golden. Now, this guy. I'm printing that from here. Why is that not a good idea? Notice how I'm trying to teach you design at the same time, right?
Kind of multiple objects being returned from one.
No, it's one object, it's one string object.
It is one string object.
You might want to expose more information from your table, your schema table.
Say that a little
You
bit
may
softer.
want to expose more information than just that. At some point, you might want to print something else.
Or maybe I want to actually do something with them, right? Maybe I want the objects themselves and actually do something with. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a single use, right? All it does is print these guys. Well, big deal. What if I want to like drop a handful of tables, call a method on them or something like that, right? I have to write another function because all this does is print these guys, right? So let's genericize that as well.
Bring back the objects.
And we'll just bring back the objects. So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna cut it out of there. And hold on real quick. Undo that. Dir equals, right, so I'm getting my CD to there, and then I just wanna do a dir, right? So let me take this guy and put that down here for now, just out of the way. And now for this, I'm just going to return dir. Right? Because all I want is a list of objects. So I'm just going to return dir.
Delete line 14.
Delete line 14.
I think so.
No, that's the function. Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right.
There you go.
There we go. And I'm going to get my semi. So now that I'm getting a list of objects from here, and this is an entire list of objects, now I've got to deal with it down here, right? So for each one of these, I'm going to say table list equals get all tables. just like that.
There you go.
Move that up a little bit. There we go. So I'm gonna get all tables, and now I've got a table list. And now I can have another function if I want to that returns that, right? Or I could leave it just like that if I want to, but I think I'd rather have a function. So now we gotta get into scope, because scope is a really, really big deal. Especially if you eat a lot of garlic. There we go, okay. I'm funny, damn it. So scope is gonna help you declutter this script. So scope means the same thing it does in SQL, right? And you know all about scope being C and all that, right? It's the same thing.
Where your variables became the values.
The variables have lifespans, if you will, right? So if I put a variable at the top of this script, right up here, that variable can be seen everywhere in this script. If I put a variable in this function like result, it can only be seen inside this function. It's scope. It's function scoped versus global or script scoped. Understand? Cool. Most of you guys understand scope automatically, so I don't have to spend a lot of time on that. I am thrilled. Oddly enough, scope is one of the things I don't really like explaining all that much. I don't know why. It just, anyway. So the rule of functions, I'm going to collapse these, is they have to be above the code that calls them.
Makes sense.
I can't take, it's not like C or C plus or C sharp where I could put these anywhere in there and they'll be seen. It's gonna run the script in order, which means it's gonna create the functions, then it's gonna use the functions. I'll get an error if I try to put them down here. But if I got a lot of functions, or a couple really big ones, putting them at the top of the script, a lot of times it causes two problems, right? One, it mucks up your script, right? I mean, sure, you still got it centralized, but the whole script is just mucked up, right? And number two, it's not reusable.
Right.
Because it's in this script. I have to create these functions in every single script I want to use them in, right?
Be cool if you had a library somewhere where you could put your functions.
Wouldn't it?
Import function or something?
So, we are going to take these functions. Let me go ahead and start up another PowerShell script. New PowerShell script. And I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to call it, let's see, functions. So let's save it as functions. There we go. And I'm going to take these two guys and I'm going to move them in there. Now the reason we talked about scope is because of this. Dot, whack, dot, space, dot, whack. I'll go ahead and do that. There we go. So, this is called dot sourcing. When you say dot, space, and then something, right? And here's what it does. If I say, let's look at one of these guys, server list. Let's look at server list. So let's come out here. Let me copy this again. Copy the path. Come over here. There we go. CD, I learned this last time. Oh, look at that, it's already there. I love the new editor. It's got the predictive stuff in there, it's great. Okay, so if I want to say dot whack and then, actually, it's whack. Look at that, it's already got it. And I want to run that. Okay, good. Let's stop that real quick. Now, I want to look at server list. Nothing, right? Because server list lives inside that script. right? As soon as the script is done, server list is done. Easy enough, right? Parameters inside an SP can't be seen after that SP exits. But dot sourcing dot space, what it does is it changes local scopes to global scopes. So now the variables inside of there are going to be session level. Because I'm in tables. It should put me right back where I was. You see why that failed, right? Because I was at tables and you can't run a script .whack at tables. It just doesn't work, right? So now when I do this, hopefully if I kill that, and then I can say, hopefully it'll still be there. Now I get the one server that's in my server list because I dot sourced it. So we call them, in the old days we call them includes. Here they call them dot sourced files. I still call them includes, right? So at the top of here, it says, run this script, dot source it so that all of those objects inside of that script are now available in this scope, and then run the rest of the script. So now I've got this function file that I can add to any script I want. And I've automatically got my functions and variables and whatever else I want to do. Cool? And that's where functions become really, really useful. Now, let's break out of functions for a second and let's start talking about custom classes.
Okay.
So I'm going to teach you a couple things about the classes, about the objects we already know about. There we go. Jeez. Killing me. Service, there. Okay, now I want to do a get member. Okay, so I got the members for these guys. What is that? Oh, same thing. Okay, and right now, the members, methods, and properties. What's another word for object? A coding word for object. You'll know it. You may not get it because of the way I'm asking the question, but you're going to kick yourself for it. But what's another word? An object, if you were to code an object, what would you code it as? A class. There you go. It's a class, right? Because a class is a blueprint for something, right? Let's think about the famous example everybody uses is cars, right? When they develop a new car, somebody has to design it. Somebody has to give the dimensions, the features, and so on and so on and so on, right? And so that car, we'll call that the blueprint. It probably isn't called a blueprint in auto circles, but we'll call it a blueprint. But that blueprint for the car says what this car should look like. Then somebody else goes, they machine the parts, they put everything on an assembly line, and they start building these things, right? So if I've got 300 cars on an assembly line, and one of them gets a big machine dropped on it and just gets smashed, all 300 of them are trash now, right?
No.
No?
Only that one that you dropped.
Only that one that I dropped it on, right? Same thing, if I rip this sticker in half, which I'm not gonna do, probably because it's like partially like plastic or something, and it probably like, ugh. The rest of the stickers are still fine. There was a blueprint that made this, told it what it should look like, and made every one of them the same. Okay? That's what this is. This is the services class that creates that services object. And then they define inside of there all of these methods and all of these properties to tell you what it's going to look like. But do they tell you, but does the blueprint tell you what color the car is going to be? What color the carpet's going to be? What color or what type of interior it's going to have? Is it going to be leather, pleather, crushed velvet, nylon, whatever the hell, right? Let's go with spandex, shall we? But it doesn't tell you all of those things because those things are incidental, right? They have nothing to do with the blueprint of the car. So each one of these cars can have a separate color. They can have separate carpet and so on, right? All these little amenities, right? All these little properties, right? But they don't change the car as a whole, right? It's still a Miata, even though, well, that's not a Miata. Miatas are red, right? So each one of those is an instance of that blueprint. Now let me ask you this. If I say, and I'll get back to this in a second, if I say A equals get service, and can we just assume the where clause here because I don't feel like typing it? So we'll say where all the services are like windows, right? In fact, I'll just do this. Yeah. Like that. So I've got A, and now I'm going to say B. Really? I thought you would give it to me. And I'll say SQL. So I've got two different variables. One holds the Windows services and one holds the SQL services. Anybody have any complaints about that? No? Good. But you understand, right, that now if I were to print A, I would get a list of Windows services. If I were going to print B, I'd get a list of the SQL services, right? Even though I didn't put the where clauses in there, you guys are going to give me a little leeway on that, right?
Okay.
I'm pseudo-coding this a little bit. So if I do something, if I stop all of the services here, what happens to these services? Nothing, right? Good, we're working our way up. So let's look at our last GM and look at a couple things and see what we got. So we got these methods. I know you know this, so give somebody else a chance. But what does void mean? In compiled language speak, it means it doesn't return anything. Because this says close. What are you going to return? Right? I'm not asking for anything, I'm just saying close. Right? Hey dude, when you're done with that, close the door. There's nothing for him to return. When he's done, he'll close the door. Right? What does, I'm looking for something simple. System.boolean, well that's a property, damn it.
Yeah.
Integer, there we go. This one returns an integer. So this first word in here on the methods tells you what it returns. Cool. What about the properties? Bool. It tells you what it accepts. Right? What data type is the property? Well, in this case, it's can stop. Well, sure, that sounds like a bool to me. It either can or it can't, right? That's very binary. So this one is username. It takes a string. So we are now going to learn how to define our own class and set our own properties and our own methods to make this stuff really, really nifty. I'm going to shortcut this. How much time do I have in this session?
Good question.
I know, that's why I asked it.
I think we're almost over. I think 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
I could be wrong about that. Let me check.
I'm going to get the basic syntax for the class for you. Now, inside here, this just makes it really easy for me, right? New PowerShell class. Beautiful. So it's going to give me the outline of the class automatically. All you need is class, class name, and curlies. Simple, 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 right? So what do we want to call our class? What do we want to do? Let's see, let's do animals. Okay, so I got animals. Let me go ahead and save that. I've already got an animals class in there. So I've got animals. It's empty, it doesn't do anything. But if I were to load this up and pull a GM on it, it would say it was a type animals. I'll show you in a minute. Well, in the next session, right? Let's say I want to put a property in there. What's one of the properties of animals? Number of legs, right? Or let's just say legs.
Mammal.
I'm going to strong type these. Oh, not string. I want integer. There we go. So at the top, right under the class, is where you list the properties. What are some other properties that we can have? Let's do eyes. Let's do
Mammal.
is mammal. Beautiful. And I'm going to make that a bool. There we go. Whether or not it's a mammal. Very good. Let's do this one. And fly, right? Or you would, or if you want to genericize it even better, you would say like, you know, move type or something. So it would be fly, walk, swim, climb, right? Whatever, right? So whatever of these guys you want to put down, these are your properties. They're going to show up in the GM, just like that. And you're going to see each one of those data types. That's how you strongly type a variable in PowerShell. I try to always strongly type my stuff unless there's a really good reason not to. I don't think you have to type these. I don't remember because I always do it. And this says ing, it should say int. I'll change that soon. It'll let me know about it if I don't. And this is the beginning. So when we come back, we're going to spin up an instance of this class. And we're going to set some properties. Then we're going to start doing some methods. Cool? Ooh, it's standing. I'm going to change ing to int before I forget. Oh my God, I didn't sit down for a minute. Oh, that feels so good.
So you can run a get service, that's a function called get service that calls get process, and you run it, it does a get process.
There you go.
So